Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Considering most of us are working from home and set up time, it would be we are actually really happy that we are able to do this, and we're really happy that you're all joining us in today. So before we start off, we just want to tell you a little bit about Belong and why we are doing this today. So Belong is a social venture. It's a platform that started a few months ago in 2019, and we basically focus on promoting inclusion and diversity in cities, communities, and organizations. And our idea is to get to identity linked discrimination with respect to, it could be about people from different communities, it could be based on religion, class, gender, sexuality, ethnicity, race, etc., to help provide these people from communities with basic services is what we are looking at. And With that respect, Belong mainly focuses on a community-oriented approach, where we bring together people from various communities who may be discriminated upon based on their identity, and link them with and bring them onto a platform like Belong. And we are also looking for we also have allies and people who are at a place where they can positively discriminate from. Our community basically consists of people, and we try to make a safe space where people can have these kind of conversations. And apart from that, we have several services like housing, which we are trying to build inclusive housing services for people from different communities, and to ensure that people do not face identity based discrimination on the lines of religion, gender, caste, sexuality, ethnicity, race, ability, etc., while trying to seek housing. We are also now building a research collective to bring together people who are researching on different dimensions of discrimination. And very soon, we are also building a mental health platform to identify what would be the effect of mental health on people who face discrimination due to their identity and vice versa. More than anything else, we are also very focused on building this thing called the Belong Book Club and Library, through which, one, we want to promote reading of books that are going to talk about inclusion and diversity. We basically have a lot of books on diversity and inclusion that are housed at our library, and we deliver them in South Delhi for people who want to read. And we also host a lot of activities and events that have to have these conversations. Today we are doing Bust Your Bias because we want to make this a regular event about online event where everybody can log in, and we want to address some very important and myth about different communities and identities. And that's exactly why we are doing this. And I'm going to hand over to Sai, who's going to introduce what we are doing for this episode.
Hello, everyone. And in these times where we are trying to figure out how to get our lives going during the corona pandemic, this is actually one of the ways in which we think we can take this forward. And I'm hoping that everybody is safe and everybody is taking all the necessary precautions. The episodes on Bust Your Bias are basically to create a platform where conversations can happen on the issues of various social identities, and how there are very prevalent myths about communities and social identities that exist. So we will basically be attempting to cover maybe 8 to 10 myths in each episode, but we will also have a Q&A session where we'll have live interaction with people who are participating. And also this goes live on Facebook and Twitter. So any comments that we receive online or during the course, we will be addressing those as well. So the first episode of Bust Your Bias would be on transgender individuals and trans people in general. And we will be addressing myths associated with trans people. And with me is Taksh, who will be helping me host this show. Now I'll hand it over to Taksh to introduce herself a little.
Hi, I'm Taksh. I've done a whole bunch of things. I'm a poet, right? I'm a fashion blogger. I've worked as a fashion stylist. At the same time, I've also been a trans rights activist. I've focused mostly on gender sensitization programs and giving talks about gender incongruence and breaking down the gender binary. I'm a two-time TEDx speaker, and along with my father, we have a company called Ati, and the functional arm of Ati called KAME that focuses on transgender welfare. So yeah.
I think we should directly get into the myths. So we
Right,
will
I think,
start
yes.
with the most obvious one, and I think this keeps getting put across to trans people quite a lot, and that is trans people
Right.
are born with ambiguous genitalia, right? And so I will start on this. The point is, I think people in general confuse genitalia with gender way too often, and they also try to think of genitalia as the only thing that determines sex. So yeah, I don't understand why that confusion exists, but I think I'll give it to Taksh to make a few more points and then I'll take over.
The conversation around trans people always ends up coming back to their bodies, right? It always ends up coming back to super private parts of ourselves that we're supposed to kind of like just put out there publicly. So before I even like get into it, I just like, I think it's quite abhorrent that like there's this like constant obsession over like other people's genitals, right? Like, why you want to know what anyone's junk looks like? But also, I mean, also like sort of keeping it factual, there is no such thing as like ambiguous genitalia. Like that's not, you people are born with intersex characteristics, but that doesn't mean that it's ambiguous. That's frankly quite a disrespectful thing to say also.
Yeah. And also, like, the point is that there are multiple ways in which the sex of an individual is determined. Obviously, the only thing we know about determination of sex is the nurse coming outside the operation theater and telling the family, आपके घर पे लड़का हुआ है, आपके घर पे लड़की हुई है, पर nobody actually talks about what it takes to determine one's sex or even to identify intersex variations. Intersex variations can happen on various different fields. Any kind of sex is determined on like 5 characteristics at the minimum. One is the genitalia. The second is chromosomes, hormones, gonads, and secondary body features. So all of these 5, including actually is what determines sex. And there are so many permutations and combinations in which these 5 variations exist in various people. But however, even medically, we try to differentiate people into broadly male and female. And then we have created constructs of gender of man and women that are supposed to be congruent to these. So yeah, ambiguous genitalia does not exist exactly. And I think people should just keep out of people's pants. Yeah. So this myth is then busted. So we'll go to the next myth. Identifying as transgender is a medical disorder.
I think I'm gonna start on this, right? It's actually been a conversation that's been evolving, and thankfully now we're at a point where we finally, like, everybody agrees that identifying as trans is not a mental disorder. I'm so glad that now we have terms like gender incongruence to really describe like what the trans experience is like.
The idea is we have to stop looking at the way in which mental disorders have been characterized as something that's purely scientific, very honestly. I think we should start there. There was a time where mental disorders that were categorized like female hysteria, right, which is basically like sexist and misogynist at its core, right? It basically talks about women as overreacting and extremely emotional and out of the box existences, and they were not considered normal. And this is the history of pathologizing anybody who does not fit into our idea of normal. And the normal is also defined continuously by people who are powerful.
I think no, I think you've really like summed it up. That this thing, like, first of all, we have to keep remembering that like conversations about mental health, about like what it means to be, what it means to be gendered in a society, right? Like these are all conversations that have continuously been evolving. And like while I do agree that at one point it was seen as a disorder, but that's also because like I think your example was so fantastic that like look at how far we've come along. You know, we've realized that like certain things aren't like hysteria or craziness or whatever. And I, for one, am like super glad that we're at a point where we can recognize that thing like gender is not really a very binary thing, and it's not something abnormal, because I think that's what the problem is, that a lot of people think that if you're trans, right, there's something like abnormal with you, that you desire to become something that you're not. I think it's so cool that now we are finally like breaking down those barriers, and we're having those conversations that like this is simply, it's another kind of normal. You know, I wouldn't even call it a variation of the norm. I think being trans is just as normal as being cis. There truly isn't any difference.
Yeah, and also like the point is like, because I've honestly been a person who deals with a lot of mental health issues from time to time, and what I've realized is when there's a pathologization of like the immediate social identity that I occupy, as so to say that trans people in general or identifying as trans itself is a mental disorder, I feel like all other kinds of mental and emotional trauma that I go through, or all other mental and emotional struggles that I go through, are somehow subsumed into this one category of me being trans. While actually there are so many ways in which my mental health gets affected by so many other things, but to categorize them all under just being trans and looking at me being trans as a causation of my mental health issues, I think is extremely problematic. And I think that creates a huge problem in even identifying where we need to start working on our mental health. Point number one, this is myth that is unsubstantiated completely.
Absolutely
And
busted.
it is quite detrimental to even addressing mental health among people. So,
Busted.
busted.
Gone. Cancelled. Next.
Completely. All right, so we'll go on to the next myth. Trans people can be cured of their transness. So, yes. First of all, we started off with how it is trans misogyny, it is transphobic to talk about trans people as a pathologized, non-normal identity continuously. And on top of this fantasy that other people have of trans realities, of us being mental disorders or of us being something else, whatever, then I don't understand what exactly is it that they're trying to cure.
No, I think like absolutely, that's the thing, right? That this idea that I think it really does come down to a lot of like sort of trans medicalist ideas, you know, that that are very like, oh, like your body must fit a certain ideal. And now, so that's what, to me, this is like a very double-edged thing, because like you're right, like what are you trying to cure us of? And also, do you see like trans people transitioning as a sort of cure? Because like that also is again very like that's a very slippery slope to sort of go down, because then again, like if you sort of think that like transness is simply like it's like a phase that you go through, and then suddenly, you know, when you're in stealth or when you're passing, then you're kind of like normal. I think that's also so harmful, right? And you're absolutely right, there is nothing to cure. And I can't be cured of being trans as much as like I could cure probably somebody of being from like South Delhi. Like you can't, like, so it won't happen, you know.
There are only two types of curing, I think, which are acceptable for trans people. Either you cure your meats or you cure pickles.
Oh my God, I got, yes.
That's it, like.
That's the tea. That is the tea.
Don't try to
Meat and chocolate. Bye.
Yes. So also, like, it's interesting because this idea of curing has been very prevalent in the ways in which governments and the medical society has actually dealt with gender and sexuality in general. Anything that is non-cis, non-heterosexual has always been talked about from the sense of it being a disorder, and hence there being a possibility of it being cured. And I think we have extensive examples from history where these attempts have been made. It is not like we are at a point in history where you suddenly had the brilliant idea, oh, maybe we can cure this. No, this has been happening for centuries. Okay.
I mean, like, let's not forget that even today, like, there are countries in this world in 2020 where like conversion therapy is a very real thing. When you sort of like think about it, even today, these sorts of beliefs, that's why they're so scary, because it leads to a lot of young LGBTQ people, like, it creates like this almost like fear about them to like come out because they think that something's wrong with them. And as long as we drill this idea that there's something to cure, if you're queer, I think it's quite abhorrent. So
yeah. So also, I think it is very important to note that there are no scientific methods which have been proven to actually be able to cure anyone of their gender identity or sexual orientation. And any attempt to do that is actually criminal. Like, it's not anymore a point about acceptance. It's no longer a point about whether you are liberal. It's none of that. It's basically using unscientific and it's completely baseless form of
therapy. Again, like, I think LGBT people also like need to remember that, like, if their medical practitioner suggests something like this, if your mental health professional says that you have something that can be cured, they can fully like lose their license over that. It's not something that can just be bandied around.
Yeah.
Nobody can tell you or your parents that something that you have is something that is curable. So I think that's really important to like know and have with you when you're going to see a medical person, because usually I find that like for any kind of trans or gender non-conforming person, when they're trying to engage with the medical fraternity, there is always this imbalance of power, right? And that usually is what leads to so much gatekeeping that ends up happening in these situations.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, cure your meat, cure your pickles, do not try to cure us. Busted. Next. So, all right, we'll go on to the next myth. You have to be operated to be a real transgender.
I really want to know, are we like designer handbags? Like, like, listen, Sai, like, are you the transgender from Sarojini, or are you the transgender from Ambience? Because I gotta know if you're real or fake, honey. Like, what? This is so stupid. There is so, do you know what I mean? There's so much wrong with this sentence that I feel like I have to like break it down bit by bit. Because first things first, what the hell is a real transgender? What the hell is a fake transgender? Like, that is so stupid. But also, secondly, I mean, the reason I was being so like light and like frivolous about it is because this is a very real issue that plagues like the trans like sort of populace, right? Because again, I think it's important to remember that like to be transgender is not a monolith, right? It is a very unique and individual experience that is tailored by each person who is going through it. It's not like not every trans person's journey is going to be same. So I think in that, when you sort of say that, oh, you have to get operated, a surgery of any kind, right, is an incredibly personal and an incredibly invasive, honestly, procedure. If you think about it, it can be quite scary, it can be quite costly. I find it so ludicrous that like, firstly, society though anyway will treat like anybody who's non-conforming like absolute garbage, right? After that, they're like, okay, but if you want us to like not treat you so horribly, here's this massive hurdle that you must jump over, and then maybe we can let you like sit with us. Like, I think it is so ridiculous. And I think this narrative that you have to have surgery to be trans, you have to have dysphoria to be trans, you have to go on hormones. It's so stupid, because there isn't a checklist of what makes you a man or what makes you a woman or what makes you neither. Honestly, like we don't go around and tell cis people, hey, here's what this number list. Have you done this? No, sorry, not a man, not a woman. I'm sorry, I fully went off, by the way.
No, that's perfect. No, actually, I'll just take it forward from there. Also, because like I wanted to point out, it is these myths have consequences. These have real life consequences for a lot of trans people. And I'll just substantiate this point with a few examples. In a country like India, let us say, where we do not have enough medical facilities that actually are trans affirmative, right, who are able to do these surgeries or do these medical procedures, including hormone replacement therapy or gender reaffirmation surgeries, there aren't enough medical professionals that actually do these. And when we use getting operated on as a form of barrier that people have to cross to be real transgender, what that does is it creates a lot of pressure on young trans people to get operated as soon as possible without taking into consideration their own health, without taking into consideration what they will have to live with, what they will have to do. It's an irreversible procedure, and I think nobody should be pressured to go through this. It has to be an individual's choice, irrespective of whatever. It has to be an individual's choice, and that somehow seems to be the point that's missing. And we in the community here in India have struggled literally to make sure that operations that happen by the ill-trained medical professionals or self-medication on hormones, etc., among the community stop, because these have very severe consequences on a person's health. But in that context, if this myth is applied onto trans people, then I think it becomes really difficult to cope with it as trans people. And also it becomes difficult because it has complications that go beyond just, anything else you want to add, Daksh?
I literally, again, I keep coming back to how, if you really break it down, it's so ridiculous, because you cannot tell a person that in order to be considered X, Y, and Z, it would literally be as ridiculous as me coming up to you and being like, hey, Sai, if you want to eat lunch with me, have you had an appendectomy? Have you got your appendix removed? If you haven't got your appendix removed, sorry, you can't sit with us. It's so stupid. And again, I think I'm going to keep saying this, and I'm already saying this, but each time that these myths come up, I'm just always so taken aback as to this constant fascination and scrutiny of trans bodies. I think it's quite I do tend to get really frustrated with it, because it's why must we constantly lead such public lives? Why must such intimate parts of ourselves be considered fair game for conversation, right? The number of times that people have asked me about my medical history just in conversation, it's ridiculous, and it genuinely does come across as a little, I would not go up to someone and be like, so hey, have you had a colostomy? What's up? Have you had a colonoscopy, sis? What? I'm sorry, which I think we can and move on.
Just on this point, I think I will have to raise one more issue. It's a problematic act that has been passed by the Indian Parliament, which is called the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019, and basically it goes against what Nalsa judgment, which came in 2014, says. Nalsa judgment in 2014 gave trans people the right to self-determination of gender identity, while this takes that away from us. So anybody who's listening, please speak up against this colonial, archaic, stupid law. And I know usually I'm trying really hard to not waste these papers. I'm going to collect them later. But for this specific one,
that be off. Cancelled. She's dead.
Not at all. Bye-bye.
Dead.
All right. So let's jump into the next myth, guys. All trans people are Hijra or Kinnar. Cool. So I'll start with actually addressing this. We have to understand that in India, we have a number of socio-cultural and religious communities of trans people that exist, right? And these communities are Hijra, Kinnar, Aravani, Jogata, Jogappa, Shivashakti, Yellamma temple surrounding cultures, and so many more that actually exist, Nupi Manbis and Nupi Manbas in Manipur. we have a number of different cultures of uh, transness that exist within the Indian society and have existed for centuries, literally. So it is difficult to actually break this myth or address this myth, but the fact still remains that Hijra Kinnar communities also like to identify as the other gender. A lot of Hijra Kinnar communities call themselves the other gender, which comes from the terms such as Tritiya Prakriti, etc., which have been written about in various texts. So yeah, not all trans people are Hijra Kinnar in any way. Yes. Taksh, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think first of all, thank you so much, because I think I learned a lot just from hearing you talk, because I genuinely had no idea that it was this diverse, right? And absolutely, I think the thing that I just want to keep reiterating, right, is that LGBTQ people and especially trans people do not exist as like a singular identity block, right? It's never that simple. Or your gender or your sexuality. It just because somebody has like a similar experience of their gender or their sexuality does not mean that they are going to like subscribe to similar belief systems, right? It is important to remember that all of these identities that we speak about are very particularly codified, and they do have social aspects, they have religious aspects, and it's kind of like really important that like these distinctions do be made. So I just think that like, yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, yes, myth busted, because it's literally like saying that, you know, all gay people are the same, right? All gay people are XYZ. And again, it comes back to like this stereotype that like that people keep like coming back to, right? That like, how do we easily categorize trans people? How do we push them into like one narrative, or how do we push them into a neatly like a neat little box? And I think
Yes.
that's something that people like really need to like step away from. And yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, actually, this happens quite a lot because I think as people who, as identities, as communities that have been told to justify ourselves continuously, you know, we're told to justify, Acha, okay, fine, we will think about it, but you tell me, no, what is this? What are you? Huh? Like, give me, no, don't complicate. Don't.
Simple.
Well, babe, it is complicated. I'm sorry. Get over it. It is complicated.
Life's complicated tuts, like they used to it. It's, I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
news flash.
And there's a lot of pressure on like trans and queer communities to actually continuously simplify all our experiences
Yeah.
into like 3 4 sentences, just so that they're more palatable, just so that people have like a better understanding of it to start with. But then again, it comes back to bite us, because when we try to simplify it for people's understanding, then they are like, oh well, you said this is what this means, but you don't look like that, you know. So
Yeah.
I think it's like this double-edged sword. So the concept is, for you to be accepting, you need not necessarily know all the definitions. Actually, you only need to make sure that you treat the person in front of you as a person,
That that's
and
just
you respect whatever that they're trying to tell you. You listen to them instead of continuously trying to figure out by yourself what they are, who they are, and where they come from. That's not your business, right? So I think, yeah. Do you have anything else to add, Taksh? Because I just want to get this done.
I think, yeah, I think we can like bust this bitch too, because I think
Yes.
it's quite
All right. So no,
uh,
it is complicated.
it's
LGBT people
truly.
are not homogeneous, and if you have a doubt, ask.
I think it's so important not to approach people with your own preconceived notions. I think it's really important to like not do that. You shouldn't try to box people in. You shouldn't try to like, because you have to understand the human experience is a complicated one. And yeah, like you said, it's not always that simple. Bye. Next.
Next. All right. So the next one is again very, very interesting. All trans people are either trans men or trans women. Ah, all right. Okay. We're back to men and women, I see.
Right, we're right back. It's, I think that's the theme, right? It's either like an intrusion of privacy, or it's like an attempt to just like viciously categorize us.
Hmm.
I think first of all, I'm just gonna reiterate some basics, right? Gender is not binary. I think people need to always keep that in mind. And neither is gender something that's concrete, by the way. Gender is a performance that you perform by taking social cues. That means that gender is on a spectrum,
Yeah.
right? And the word trans is an umbrella term, and this umbrella term covers so many different sort of gender identities that lie on that spectrum that aren't just man or woman. I think when we say things like, oh, you're transitioning from this gender to that gender, we're erasing so many non-binary people, so many agender people, we're really just erasing all of these identities that have always existed, right? And again, it really does come back to that extremely like pharmacological medical sort of like aspect that people think that trans lives have, that you are always trying to change something about yourself into something else. And I think that is it's quite damaging, and it's quite annoying, because I have friends who are non-binary, who are quite wonderful, and who are doing so much important work at deconstructing what it means to perform gender, right? Just by existing. So I think when you kind of like start erasing them, it's quite rude, firstly, right?
Yeah.
It's horrible.
I just think I'll give you like two examples, everybody who's listening in. Okay, so let us say you identify as a woman and you like wearing formal shirts and you like wearing pants, and somebody comes and tells you, well, pants are a man's attire. Right, and this is actually a very common phraseology that talks about who wears the pants around this house,
Yeah.
etc. Right, so just as much as you start feeling invalidated about your own identity, the same way when you go to a trans person, you're like, oh, so now that you've taken all this effort to like perform as a woman or perform as a man or perform just your gender,
Yeah.
right? Like I will still forever, I don't know, till God knows when, I will always be a trans woman with a beard. So I will always be this body with a beard and a sari. Like it's just going to be me. So there are various ways in which our identities are not binary. We are not trying to fit back into the binary by being trans. We are just being ourselves. Well, is it difficult to understand? Yes. Do we care?
Nope.
Maybe not
I
as
mean,
much.
as long as like I feel like some people's like non-understanding doesn't like lead to violence. I think that's what people keep forgetting, that you don't have to understand everything. It's fine. If something does not make sense for you, maybe that's just not for you.
Yeah.
There is so much out there in the world. I think
Yeah.
so. Like under the guise of trying to understand someone, don't inflict the violence of erasure upon them. Is I think all I can say.
Also, like, I think this is like the crux of what we are trying to say. Gender is fluid, right? And very honestly, I'm just going to say it, gender is not even a spectrum. There is no two extremes of a man and a woman and everybody in between. So gender is a cloud. There are so many different ways in which sex manifests in people, and similarly, there are so many different ways in which people identify with their gender. And ideally, in a world, if you want to be sensitive, just realize as many people, that many genders.
I mean,
Yeah, there is like nobody is near a man or near a woman. People are just themselves.
Yeah.
The only thing you have to be conscious about is go ask them their pronouns, guys, please. Yeah, so like,
bye.
Bye. All right, so again, something very similar that from what we covered the last time, which is all trans people are heterosexual. Well, okay, so basically the point is, do not assume, point number one, that's basic for everything, almost everything we're covering right now. Do not assume, if you're not going to assume that any other person is heterosexual or not, you will similarly not assume for trans people their sexual orientation, right? And there's a lot of invalidation because the idea of your gender is so closely tied to whom you're attracted to. Like, if you want to be a woman, then you have to be attracted to a man. This performance is extremely, extremely damaging. And I just think this is one of the myths that exists way too often. Yeah. Taksh?
I think it all comes back to, right, like the assumption that like either cisness or heterosexuality is the norm and everything else is a deviance from it. I do think it's so ridiculous because, like you said, you wouldn't assume that like I guess some people do, but like if you're a wee bit like in here, like I keep saying I don't think there is something like being 100% heterosexual. I just don't believe that, right? You will never convince me. I mean, it's like that Honey Boo Boo quote, like everybody's a little bit gay, and I firmly like I will stand by that. I will die on that hill. But with that being said, right? I do understand how this thing like the person you are attracted, the kind of people that you are attracted to, plays such a large role in how you are seen then by society. So I'm just going to share like a little personal anecdote. It took me forever, right, to actually come to terms with my own, I mean, bisexuality, pansexuality, whatever you want to call it, but my own attraction towards women and femmes, because for the longest time, I was terrified that if I actually admitted to this, it would invalidate everything else about my gender identity, that people wouldn't take me seriously, right? But I think it's, I think it's quite, you do tend to like really reduce people down when you kind of like think that, okay, if you're like you're becoming a woman, because first of all that's also just so stupid, right? Like nobody's becoming nothing, we've just so then though you're going to be attracted to men only, no, like array simple.
Obviously.
Array. And it's like, hey, again, right, like gender is fluid and sexuality as well, like it's, I think again, like I just said, like everybody's a little gay, and I will die on that hill.
Also, like for the basics, right? Gender and sexual orientation are different. They intersect from times. Sometimes there are different ways in which they interact with each other. But conceptually, gender and sexual orientation are different things. You can identify with a gender
independent of each other. Like,
yes, yeah. And both of them are identities that are to a certain extent mutually exclusive. When people tell you, please, for whoever's in the sky causing corona right now's sake, do not.
I'm like terrified in quarantine. Don't say her name.
Do not assume anybody's sexual orientation, and do not show disbelief when people tell you, like, if I'm a lesbian trans woman, then do not come and tell me, oh, what is that? How can you be lesbian and trans woman? Like, please keep those questions to yourselves. And I think, yeah, we also, like, this is another thing which I feel like
tear that shit up, bye.
Tearing it up. I'm doing this so angrily, I can't even tell you. All right, we'll go on to the next myth now, guys. And the next myth is India has historically been accepting of trans people. Okay. All right. So I think I'll start with this. See, you cannot confuse existence with acceptance. Okay, we existed. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. We existed and you didn't kill us.
Go.
And that is something we are supposed to be grateful about. And, like, slow claps indeed. Like, this is not something we're going to be grateful for. The only historical proof that exists is that trans people lived since forever in this country. That's the only claim you can make. You have at the same time also restricted trans people into professions such as begging. Historically, in 1870, the colonial laws introduced something called the Criminal Tribes Act, which basically means so I'm wearing the sari, and if I was to stand on my balcony or not even on my balcony, let's say I open the door to my balcony a little bit and try to peek out, and a little bit of my dress is visible, I can be put in jail for 2 years for being ornamented like a woman and trying to and being in a place with the intention of being seen by public. So if I stand anywhere ornamented as a woman just with the intention of being seen in public, I can be put in jail for 2 years. Well, that doesn't sound very accepting to me.
Yeah.
Taksh, do you have anything to add?
Oh, absolutely. No, I do. I do have a bit to say about this, right? This is controversial, but here's the thing, right? When you have people like Lakshmi Narayan Tripathi who get up and say that Lord Ram gave every single trans person like the right to live with dignity in this country, it really I think this is the problem, that like for so many of us we really do give into like this constant propaganda that somehow we had this like beautiful golden age once, where everybody was just accepted and everything was just all hunky-dory, and then just these kharab foreigners just came in, right, and introduced their heathen ways. Like you're very right. Evidence of existence does not equal acceptance. I think we all need to stop glorifying this idea that there existed this once golden age for like everything, because that's not true. I'm a firm believer that the present is as good as it's going to get ever. So I think with that being said, I think first of all, but it's also very good that we remember that, because we talk about like trans people existing in India and there being historical evidence, so that I always find is like a really helpful way to shut people up, and they're like, this 20th century everybody's trans, bro. Like ye kya scene hai boss? Sab matlab kabhi ladka ladki ban gaya. What is so like, like people really do be thinking that like transness or like gender non-conformity is this like brand spanking new like 21st century invention, and that's not true, right? Trans people have been around. We've been around forever. But I will say that in my opinion, the kind of conversations we have around transness now, around gender, we have never had those kind of conversations before. The level of acceptance and visibility that like trans people are enjoying now is unprecedented. Like I'll just say that when I was 11, 12, right, so I can't even imagine two trans, like I couldn't even imagine one trans woman on the internet talking with so much authority, about being trans, much less two of us out here like sharing these experiences. So I just think that, yeah, we've never really treated anybody who's been different from the norm quite very nicely. And as long as we keep thinking that, no, once upon a time we treated them great, and we like, no, you've never done that. Maybe you should start now.
Exactly. And also like, I think over here, I'll just have to put one perspective in place, and that is that do not homogenize even the way in which trans people see history, right? So there is a lot of political motivation, right? In the present days and time, we see the way in which there's a lot of co-option of people who are from marginalized backgrounds. So if you are a right-wing organization that actually does not believe in inclusion, but you keep one trans person as your spokesperson who says things that are conducive to your narrative, then that doesn't work that way. And yeah, I think we need to understand and realize that whenever we have doubts, go back to facts, right? And facts, to a large extent, from what we know, we'll get an idea of what we can say, instead of just feeling like there is some amount of validity in our opinions. And very honestly, opinions can change every other day, but certain facts will remain. So
Facts are facts.
Facts are facts. All right. So yes, India has not been the most accepting country for trans people, and this is the last myth, guys. So we are done. All right, awesome. So I think we will now open this up for discussions. Ahmed Fawaz, who asks, do you believe that things have changed for better in the last 5-7 years, or we are where we were? Taksh?
Oh my God. Okay. Right. I try to be an optimist. So I will say, first things first, that like I said in the last point, that we are now having conversations that we have never had. we're breaking unprecedented ground when it comes to our experience of gender, right? And all of that. I think that's fantastic. With that being said, violence against trans people is at an all-time high. Right, the average life expectancy for trans people is at an all-time low. Right, 41% suicide rate, I believe. This thing, I again, like, I'm not very like clear on the exact statistics because it's not something I like memorizing. Right, it's not something that I like, but it's something that like you're constantly reminded of. That across the world, this thing, trans and gender non-conforming bodies are almost constantly under attack, whether it is by the formulation of policies like that are horrifyingly detrimental, like the, and I can't believe I'm saying this, the Trans Act, right? Like, it feels gross saying that. So, like, yeah, it's great that, like, we're out here, like, being trans and, like, living these fun, fabulous lives. It's lovely that, Laverne Cox and, like, Janet Mock and all these people are getting recognition that they deserve. It's fantastic. But at the same time, hey, we have the Trans Act now that's going to put you in front of a panel of judges like it's American Idol to decide if you're a real trans or a fake trans. So,
yeah. And I genuinely also like, see, it is a question that is very pertinent to these times because we have to realize that before this, in the Indian context, trans people were largely left alone. So basically, trans people did not exist at all as far as law was concerned. And right now, people are trying to address trans people from their own warped up ideas of what transness means. Right? So that we are on one hand happy about recognition, but on the other hand, this non-inclusive, non-participatory governance of trans people that is happening is, I think, way more detrimental. This is actually far more dangerous because when we were at least left alone, we had the option of not engaging, or we had the choice of what situations we want to put ourselves in. But now with this necessary governance of trans people, we have literally gone back, I think, a century. We've gone back, and this has been the way in which people talk about it. Like, in the sense, initially it was about whenever there were laws about trans people, it was about regulating them and making sure that this social disease people were just like these delinquents, and these non-normal people are just kept away from society. That was the idea, right? And right now the point is all the other provisions remain the same, but the narrative has changed to, oh, we are just trying to do what is good for you. So, like, thank you so much, auntie, but no.
No, like, again, we keep coming back to the fact that, like, trans bodies are just always under scrutiny and always expected to be performing a lot more public. And
all right, I think we will go to the next question. Have you ever felt the pressure to know everything about being trans because you have to constantly defend your identity?
Listen!
And they go on to say, I'm not able to see the name here, I'm really sorry, but they go on to say, because as a non-binary person, I totally feel like I have to be ready to take a class on gender at any given point of time.
Can I please start off with this, because that is my life. Oh my God, whoever this person is, like, yo, you get it. You have no, like, listen, because I used to feel that pressure when I was younger. It was ridiculous because I feel like I had to not only educate myself, but I had to educate myself to such a degree that, like, I could convince my parents, by my mental health professionals, the medical professionals, that it was you. And on top of, like, the real life, then also, like, trolls online. I used to definitely feel the pressure when I was a lot younger to be super smart about my transness, because also I feel like for me personally, I felt like there was a lot of shame like for me attached to being seen as stupid or being seen as less than, because already, because then that means that you're already thinking like, oh, okay, like I'm already not going to be taken seriously because of my transness, because of my expression of gender. So you kind of like build that up in your brain, and you have to be like, shit, I gotta be smart, then I have to be smart, you know, because they're all gonna be looking at me and like probably laughing. But like, so if I can just, and I think it's such a horrifying thing to fall down into, because I shouldn't have to like give a class on gender the drop of a hat. I really shouldn't.
Exactly. And also, I feel like when we get asked these questions about our gender way too often, it is actually a process of just invalidating our identities continuously.
Yeah.
So when you have to realize that when you come up to us randomly and say, oh, you know what, like I understand you're trans and all, but the point still is that there are only two genders. What we basically feel like I am living in some fantasy world where something is wrong with me and I'm just trying to feel normal. And, you know, it causes a lot of angst within us. Like these questions are loaded. These questions are really loaded. So to continuously be at the receiving end of these questions, because see, the point is, I really wish there was this way in which I could most probably just like wear around a dress that has like all my experiences of gender written like all over my body or something, or like carry an umbrella that I can just like shove in people's face with like all the explanations just written there. But the amount of times you get asked these questions is actually the most annoying part. It's not that we don't mind answering, but I also feel like you need to create spaces for engagement instead of just battering us wherever you find us.
I mean, also like, hey, here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. Just a personal suggestion, right? If you're at a party and you see a trans person, please just don't decide. Like you're at a party, calm down. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're in a public setting, don't just ambush the nearest trans person you find with like your questions and your anecdotes and your beliefs about gender, because that's just not cool. That's not cool, and it's just like not socially acceptable. So I mean, that's just like my little PSA. But like, yeah, I think we both agree that like we both feel quite pressured. And I think this exists for any kind of trans person and any like, you know, GNC non-binary person who feels like they have to have all the answers, because we shouldn't. We're not Google. Google exists. Go find her.
So I'll just read out the next one is hello, it's me Shivangini. Currently I'm doing my research in University of Delhi with specialization in transgender history. I could be able to relate your point of view with my study, and it's interesting to evaluate where I'm standing with my work. What I find that crux of this issue lies in naturalness and normality related to binary mode and constructed image of what it means to be a man and a woman. So I believe that there is a need to broaden or redefine the idea related to being a man and a woman in the era of gender identity wars. It could help in modifying the existing laws and privileges for normal male and female, covering every aspect. What do you think? I think I'll just take this up. See, on one hand, we are talking about it is not gender identity wars, right? Huh. These identities are lived experiences that actually cause real life vulnerabilities. And these vulnerabilities need to be specifically addressed. When we are trying to say we are trans people and this is an identity for us, we are not really saying, oh, well, identity is very important. What we are trying to say is that there are vulnerabilities and policies that need to specifically address transness in this context. And yes, obviously, for every other context, it is important that we redefine the entire concept of man and woman. But sorry, I don't think trans people will be able to do it themselves. So you work on that. We will work on our lives right now because we are in quite a mess. All right. So I'll just go to the next question quickly, and Taksh, maybe you can take this forward. What does Avtar Sehgal asks, Taksh and Sai, what does transness mean to each of you? One line?
I think, yeah, first of all, hey, shout out Avtar, that's my friend, hey girl, love you. But also, I think to me, what transness means, joy, honestly. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm so thankful for my life and all the experiences that have made me the person I am today. So when I now think of transness, I think of euphoria.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful way of putting it, Taksh, honestly. Transness for me, basically, I think it doesn't mean anything to me. To be very honest, I'm trying to reach a point in my life where me being trans means nothing to me, where it's just like everything else, where it is the same as me having dark skin. And it just doesn't matter. I'm desperately trying to reach that point.
I love that.
All right, so I think I will wrap this up. First of all, I would like to thank everybody who sat through this entire conversation so patiently, and loads of love to all of you. Oh my God, like I would hug you, but then Corona. So
We're not doing hugs in 2020. Sorry. No hugs for
No hugs.
2020.
hugs are cancelled. But in perspective, I would like to tell everybody to please, please, please be safe in this present context, and just like take care of yourself, take care of your family, while at the same time, please make. Make time for yourself. Take care of yourself. Okay, Taksh, it was lovely having you on board. Thank you so much. You were really insightful, and I'm sure everybody really enjoyed this conversation with you. All right, thank you, everyone. So we leave this here now and take care. Please, please take care. Yes.